Hello and welcome to the Behind the Blockchain podcast. Today I'm joined by Nicky Chalabi, Head of Business Development at Telos. Nicky, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi guys, awesome meeting you. Thank you so much, Jack, for hosting me. I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Not bad. Nicky, for people who don't know who you are, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Nicky Chalabi. I've been in the space for quite some time. I've actually started working since 2017 in crypto and initially started at crypto exchange, then moved on to crypto custody solution provider. And after that, started to work for various foundations, including Near and Neon. And currently I'm with Telos Foundation. Personally, also I like to spend my time reading books, actually enjoying enjoy hiking, and since I live in Switzerland, I do enjoy winter sports. So that's a little bit about me, and looking forward to this podcast and answering to your questions, Jack.
Nice. I think you have to enjoy winter sports if you live in Switzerland, right? That's
Yes,
almost a given.
correct. I mean, you also have a lot of possibilities, right? You don't have to go essentially like too far away to enjoy them. Like you can just like take a train, like go somewhere close by, like 30 minutes away from you, and just like ski, snowboard. So it does give you that opportunity, which is great.
That's good.
I mean, Switzerland is a place where people also enjoy doing winter sports, especially on Sundays, because everything else is closed anyway. So you can't do much. You either go for hiking or for winter sports. So, yeah.
That's that's quite nice. That's quite
Yes,
nice.
yes, exactly. You get some time to touch grass. So let's put it this way.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, Nicky, you briefly touched on it then, but could you talk us through your career journey so far? Did you have a pre-Web3 part to your career before moving in? Like, what did that all look like?
Sure, I can tell you. And I will always tell to people, like, I used to work in the traditional space. I mean, I used to work in the software development actually. So I was working for a company that was actually providing software as a service solution to financial institutions like big banks or asset managers, like regulated entities. And essentially, I always say, yes, I would never want to go back because the rhythm and the space is somehow is completely different, right? So and when I was in that space, like in a traditional space, actually, like I was always checking what's going on, like in terms of novelties in the like in general industry, in the tech space, and so on. And of course, you come across, like for example, stuff like Bitcoin, like coins like Bitcoin, like and the concepts. You read the white paper, but I wasn't that smart enough to actually pay too much attention to it. Let me put it this way. So for me it was like, okay, this is cool, but okay, I don't understand much about it, so I will just like ignore it to a certain extent. Like I've tried it, I'm not gonna say that like I didn't, but like I didn't understand it, so I bought it. So I was like looking at it, I'm like, okay, what do I do now? Like that was my question. And essentially my interest sparked when the like round of ICOs, or when the wave of ICOs started. And I thought this was cool because now like you can actually go, you can analyze a startup that you like, you can read the white paper, you can join the Telegram and transparently ask questions, and you can invest in that startup. So basically, if this right, like what let's say was reserved for privileged ones before, like VCs and other investors, now you could actually play the investor role yourself and choose the startup that you would like to invest in. So that's what I thought was cool. And I like you saw like wave of innovation coming in. I mean, never mind that bunch of ICOs, like majority of them, like 99% end up being scams. But like despite that, I think this was a very great like playing ground for you to actually check out the space and to to actually kind of play with it and see whether it fits your needs and or no. Like, and also back then, like right when this started, there wasn't so much of information, so you didn't have a lot of information, let's say on YouTube or on Medium, right? You couldn't read much about stuff and be like, okay, so let me try this out or try that out. So you actually basically, like, lots of things were happening, of course, still on Twitter, but also like word of mouth. You had to attend sometimes meetups to get an idea of what's going on in the space and so on. But like generally speaking, that was like how I ended up in Web3. And like when I started trying that out, I was like, okay, I don't actually want to stay in the traditional space. I would like to go and work in the Web3 space, because I really find it like super cool, and I really love the people that are there, right? So
Yeah.
and the work is dynamic, and usually it is groundbreaking because it requires like quick adaptation to new technologies and market changes. And what I really like is that like the pace is fast, and you work alongside like builders and visionaries, and it's kind of an exhilarating experience. So for me, it was a must after that, and for me, it was like, okay, I really like, and also like you get to experience different levels of responsibilities, and you get to actually wear many hats, because like you're in a startup environment and you can't just do like a specific job as you're required to do in the traditional space. So here you really need to actually go into trenches and try different roles, do different things, and at times like maybe do a work that you're not like really familiar with, which is great because it also like kind of like improves your knowledge. You adapt much faster, and you actually learn more. So since I like after I joined Web3, like I realized that like my learning experience, like, or my learning curve was like really different than what I had in the traditional space.
For sure. So then you decided to take an interest in business development and partnerships specifically. Why?
Correct.
Why that area?
Sure. Generally speaking, like I have always been in the customer facing roles. So like even during like my during the time when I was in the traditional space, I was working as a technical consultant. So I was working with the like financial institutions, and mostly I was like speaking directly to the customers, right? So for me it was like a kind of I am an extrovert. So for me it's just due to my I would say character, due to the way I am as a person. So for me it was a no-brainer to be in the business development, because I really like to work with people, right? So if you are an introvert, maybe that's not the best job for you, but like if you're an extrovert, essentially like you would want to work maybe with people, and business development essentially is a great thing. And like a lot of people think of business development in Web3 in a manner like, okay, these are the sleazy sales guys trying to sell us something.
Yeah.
and, and for me it's different in Web3. Like maybe yes, to some extent I can agree when it comes maybe to the traditional space, like to banking, to insurance and so on, but like in Web3 it's different, because like when you're trying to sell the product in Web3, whatever it is, be it a blockchain, be it like I don't know, whatever service like you're trying to sell, or be it like what's the name, compliance tool or whatever, right? So you have to know your product, and you have to understand to certain level technicalities. I'm not saying that you should be able to code, or you should be able to like it's, even though I think it's an added value definitely, but I'm not saying that you should really like go too much into the depth, but like still you have to know your product, and you have to understand what's going on around you, right? So what's going on with your competitors, what's going on, for example, in other ecosystems, why are they doing that, what kind of programs are they running, like, and you have to stay on top of your competition. So that's the thing, and you need to have that knowledge in order to be able to do your job properly. Otherwise you will not be able to get most out of your job. That's number one. And you will not feel satisfied as well, because if you, for example, see the other companies or the other projects performing much better than your project, you essentially like feel like, okay, what am I doing wrong? And it's not like this attitude where you say like, okay, I'm just sales, I'm doing sales. No, you have to always constantly educate yourself, and you have to be open to learn, like, and that's basically what I value in this space, because it's like it teaches you quite a lot, and you have a lot of information as well available at your fingertips, right? So it's not like a
Yeah.
closed environment where you can't deduct that information, or where you can't get that information. You actually have that access, and you can ask people too, so which is very cool. Like, you don't even have to be embarrassed or ashamed. Like, your question can be as stupid as you think, as you want it to be. No one is here to judge you, and I think you should keep on asking questions to learn, because like in the end of the day, in this industry, no one can claim that they know everything. So like the industry is so dynamic that things are moving really fast, and the pace is super fast, so you just can't like keep up with all the stuff that are happening. So you have to, of course, sometimes ask questions, sometimes learn, and yeah, it takes time. But essentially, like, all the tools are out there to learn. Like, you can just like from one day to the other start learning, and you have all the information available. This is how I see it. So, and as a matter of fact, for me, it was like, since I really like working with people, since I really like talking to projects, since I really like talking to actual founders and innovators, for me, I was like, okay, I want to be in business development, and essentially I want to work like with like I would say greatest and brightest minds in the industry.
That's cool. That's cool. And you touched on it. You touched on it there. Excuse me. You touched on it there about certain skills I think that you must have developed along the way in order to achieve your position now. Obviously, being able to understand maybe technical concepts or just having that growth mindset of like always wanting to learn. Are there any other key skills that have really helped you become a head of business development for the Telos Foundation in Web3?
Sure. Generally speaking, like I think when you are in Web3, you shouldn't like focus on the title or
Yeah.
something like that, because like it's not, for example, it's not like in the traditional space again where people are chasing titles, or like for example when people get promoted and essentially like for example they change from executive director or to managing director or whatever. Like I don't understand the difference between those two. I'll be honest. But essentially, like for example, a lot of the times they go and show off with those titles, and I think like in Web3 that's not the mindset to have. Like you should it's a noise, I would say, to a certain extent. Of course, like when your title goes, like you get a different title, you might also you might also get salary increase, which is always great, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is that like that the title itself per se shouldn't be your focus, right? You should be focusing on most like okay, what can I learn in this space, and what can I deliver? Because in the end of the day, even if you're working for a specific company or a project, you're actually, the space is so small, you're actually enhancing the space as well. So you have to
Mm.
think of that as well. And I think that's a great opportunity because you can actually make an impact, right? So, and if you do a great job, like people will talk about you and they will try to copy you and see what can they actually inherit from the actions that you've taken, what can they learn from you, and they will be reaching out to you to also get your opinion as well, which is great. And when it comes to me personally, I like to share my opinion. I like to share my let's say when someone reaches out to me, I like to share my opinion. I like to provide guidance if I can, like if I understand the topic, if I know the topic. If I don't know, of course I kind of say that I don't know this, so I'm not the right person to ask. But I think like this is what you should do, because like you shouldn't think of like, okay, I'm competing with the other chain or with the other project, I cannot tell them this or that. That's a wrong mindset and that's a wrong attitude. Like you should try to actually try to help out your industry peers. Let me put it this way. And generally speaking, right, so what is very like what is different for me, like I would say maybe as my personality or as my approach, like for me what's very important is continuous learning. So for me it's like very important to keep updating my knowledge about new technologies, new chains and market trends. And also like you have to build a robust professional network within the industry, right? As you grow, as you actually like get engaged more. And I think like one of the key elements that or one of the key skills I would say that a lot of BDs miss, this is my view, it's actually getting back to people. It's very simple, but it can do its magic. Let me put
Yeah.
it this way. So it's basically like what I mean by that. So let's say, yes, you're a business developer. Of course, you, for example, use tools such as Telegram most of the time, right, for communicating with the other people. Like you may use some other tools as well, like Twitter, LinkedIn, but most probably your day-to-day relies on Telegram usage. And essentially, like a lot of the times you get messages, right? People ping you. Sometimes those are the scam messages, or you're working with the projects and those projects ping you, And you might be surprised, like how many cases you might see when the people just don't get back, even to the
At
project.
all. At all.
At all, exactly, for
Wow.
days, like, and it's like, okay, maybe you're on holiday or whatever, or sometimes it happens that you forgot to answer, but like you see this, like actually this happening continuously, and you're like, okay, that's not a good thing. Like whether you're in Web3 or in a traditional industry, it doesn't matter. Like you always have to get back to people, and you understand, like for example, like for example the counterparties that you work with, when you get back to them, like they're also different to you when they work with you, because they're like, okay, fine, like I'm getting the best experience here, I'm getting the best service here, because like people are getting back to me. So I mean, like I worked in different foundations, like, and I have seen this like continuously, and for me it's like an epidemic, I would say, still in the industry, and that needs to be fixed, because for me I think that's the most crucial part. Like if you can master that, of course we can always complain that we get a lot of Telegram messages and we don't know when to answer, like how to answer, and so on and so forth, but I think that's an excuse personally. And I always say, like, you should be always responsive, and I think that's the key, that's the biggest I mean, I would say that that's the most important skill that you should have, and I think that will be like one of the ways where you can succeed. So that's my view.
I like that. I think that's a really good tip. Yeah, always being responsive and getting back to people in a timely manner and things like
Correct.
that. I
Correct.
even see it in the recruitment world as well. And obviously, our job is people, uh, really. And yeah, like people not getting back to people quick enough, or ignoring messages, or yeah, just ghosting people and this kind of stuff. Yeah, it happens
Correct.
in every industry. I think whenever there's business development or sales and things like that involved. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
it
I
doesn't
don't know if
matter which
it's
industry you're in. Like you can be in
yeah
traditional space, you can be a banker, you can be, I don't know, like an insurance salesman, you can be in Web3. It doesn't matter, right? Like it happens in every industry, especially when you're working with people, and you see these cases. They're quite common. So the thing is that in the traditional space, I would say it's not that amplified, because a lot of the correspondence goes via email. So
yeah.
let's say you're actually conversing with your bank, or you're speaking to someone else, your insurance provider, and so on and so forth. So it's all, majority of the correspondence goes via emails, right? Or sometimes you give a call. But the problem is that in Web3 it's much more obvious, because you are in, like, you're using Telegram, and you have like those Telegram groups where people like speak to each other, and you see basically who responds, who doesn't respond, and you see that sometimes like it takes for a person like a week to respond, and you're like, okay, it's just a simple question. You can always, if even if you don't have an answer, you can just say like, okay, give me some time, I don't have the answer, but let me get back to you. I think it's better than just like leaving it open-ended without any answer.
Yeah, I agree. And also on Telegram as well, you get the double tick, right? When someone's read your message. So
That's correct.
if you're messaging people one on one, you can see if you're being ignored. Um,
Totally.
but I was going to ask you actually about your end goal when you started your career, and I was going to ask if your goal was always to become, you know, the head of business development somewhere. But by the sound of it, that wasn't your goal at all. As you mentioned, like job titles aren't necessarily a thing for you. Did you always have the goal of, look, I want to be in business development in some capacity within a project or within a company? I assume you didn't know about Web, as you mentioned, didn't know about Web3 at the time. But was it always your end goal to be in a, you know, a lead business development type position?
Like I would say definitely not. That wasn't my end goal actually. And I think like when it comes to business development, right? So generally speaking, like as I mentioned, right, I really like working with people. So for me, it's like great, and I feel like it's a great opportunity, because I can work with the brilliant minds in the industry, with the founders, with great projects, like learn more about their product, like get some alpha, as I say, and understand more the product. And actually, if I have questions, I can have direct access, right, and ask them those questions. But the thing is that, like, what we always forget to say, like, or to mention, like, business development, I think it's not just a role, it's a skill as well. So like CEO needs to be a business developer. I think COO needs to be a business developer. A DevRel needs to be a business developer, right? So
Yeah,
because like CEO needs to sell the product, like no matter what, right? So if you go to conferences or whatever, you will be speaking to people, and you need to be able to sell that product, your product, and what you're doing. Then CTO as well, like of course that can be a technical wizard, and like, but always you see that the most, I would say, successful CTOs are the ones that have also they're not introverts, they're extroverts, and they also understand the technicalities. These are the most successful people, I would say, in the industry, because they know how to code, they understand the code behind, and they know how to speak to the people. So like CTO also needs to be a business developer. So for me, it's like it's just like, even if you're a founder of the project, you need to sell your project. Your project won't sell yourself, like itself by itself. So let me put it this way, like, you always have to keep on selling your product, because in the end of the day, like, it has to, like, people have to know about it, people have to try it out, people, like, they have to check it out and see whether it fits their needs or no. Like, you can't just be quiet about the product and be like, okay, expect the people to learn more about it. Of course, unless you're gonna actually, for example, launch something like ChatGPT, that's something different. But then, even then, like, how many years did it take to get to the version of ChatGPT that we have currently? Or
Mhm.
like Telegram, right? So like, of course, Telegram can claim that, like, they didn't have the sales department, but everybody knew that the guy who invented the Telegram, he was the one who invented the biggest social, like, network in post-Soviet Union countries like Russia, Ukraine, and so on and so forth, that was used widely. So that's the thing. So, like, there was already some sort of a brand associated, right? So, and
Mhm.
just like, due to that brand, the other stuff became also successful to a certain extent. So that's what I mean, like, in the end of the day, everyone needs to be able to sell the product, and I think everyone needs to be, to a certain degree, a business developer. Like I say, like, for example, for me in this space, it's also very important to learn the technicalities, not just be like a salesperson, like, to try to understand, okay, for example, how a specific protocol works. If I can get deeper into it and understand the code, that's also one of the things that I'd like to do. Or, for example, right, if I can compile simple smart contracts, and you have a lot of information on that, like, for example, on YouTube and on other channels where they can showcase you, for example, how to fork a Uni v2 or some other protocols. Like, you have to keep on enhancing yourself. And also, the more, like, you learn about, like, for example, as personally, the more I learn about the technicalities as well, the better I become in my job as well. So I
Mhm.
think, like, in this industry, it's quite intertwined, and I think, like, you have to try to kind of capture both ends. And essentially, like, I would say that maybe everyone, like, needs to try to be a little bit of a business developer, and try to sell the product. So this is how I see it. I think, like, it's not just a role, it's a skill, and you have to work on that skill.
I like that. Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're definitely right there. For sure. Do you have a different end goal for yourself now?
Sure. Like, I mean, the goals have to change. I would say the only goal that has to keep on, like, being there is, like, you have to keep on learning, right? So you have to keep on improving yourself, and you have to keep on being persistent as well, because, like, yeah, like, in order to basically achieve the goals that you have in place, you have to keep on pushing for them, and you shouldn't give up, because in the end of the day, if you give up too soon, like, you might be very close to achieving your goal, but you might not get there. So, generally speaking, right, like, what is my goal, right? So, in the end of the day, it's like, of course, I really love my job, I really love what I'm doing, and I think, like, I really love the space that I'm in, and I can't imagine myself being outside of this space. Like, I think I mentioned it several times already, and I have also mentioned it many times to different people that I know. Of course, like, in the end of the day, what you would want to do and try to do is, like, to start a project of your own and to see how it goes, right? So, like,
Yeah.
to wear this, like, I'm not saying, like, wear a founder hat, because again, we're talking about here the titles and having this privilege of calling yourself a founder. That shouldn't be the idea. It's more like trying things and seeing, like, okay, like, can I do it? Do I have the right idea to do it? And then, like, do I have the right team? Like, am I working with the right people in place to pull it off? And essentially, like, yeah, to create something that could benefit the whole industry and the space. That's something basically that I would love to try out eventually. And that would be my goal, to check it out if it works or no. So let me put it this way. Yes.
That's cool. Well, I'll be keeping an eye out. for when that happens. Nikki, when obviously a lot of people have most people have career aspirations. They would look at your position now and think, you know what, business development lead at a very well known project, successful project in the space. But a lot of people, I guess, they would move into certain positions without really understanding like what it actually takes to be in that position or what it even means. But could you talk us through a day in the life of a head of business development working at the Telos Foundation?
Sure. So, like, when we're talking about yeah, it depends like also on the project, right? When we're talking about head of the business development, because it can be a smaller project, then your problems are different than when it's a
Yeah,
little bit of a bigger project, because then you're actually yeah, you have different issues. Let me put it this way. Like, for example, right? How does it work for me in my day-to-day life? I work closely mostly with the projects, like the ones that I actually onboard like into the ecosystem to understand their needs. So we don't have a huge team as well. Let me put it this way. And essentially, for example, do they need liquidity? Do they need additional liquidity mining incentives, or are they applying for a grant? Like basically, also I'm checking, for example, who's applying for a grant. What are they requesting? Like, are these the new novel projects? Like, are they going to benefit our ecosystem? And then like also understanding, like, for example, the strategy of your ecosystem. Okay, so what do we want to achieve in this ecosystem? What Lego pieces are we missing? Do we need, for example, an additional AMM like a DEX, or do we need, for example, something else, like, for example, a yield aggregator, or do we need to bring something new into our infrastructural stack, be it RPC node providers or be it an indexer? So you have like one part of it is like, of course, to have a strategy in place, but also to understand like, okay, you have to kind of follow that strategy when it comes to the projects that you're onboarding. So my job is basically like on daily basis, I would say it's between onboarding and projects, and actually like getting the projects into our ecosystem, and also actually speaking to the existing projects. So working closely with the existing projects, and also like working closely with the existing projects, I mean that like not just like like replying to their needs, but also checking like, okay, can we combine, for example, these projects with another project and get like a and build a new product, or can they collaborate with, for example, this project and like offer this to the community, for example? Or like also, the other part of it is like, okay, how do we grow with our community? So I work closely with marketing here, or how do we bring more devs into our ecosystem? So here it's like also working more with the developers and with marketing here to understand basically how can we enhance our developer outreach as well. So, and essentially, of course, like, you also have to understand that it's not always as smooth as you can imagine, so, or as it sounds. So you get to do a lot of mistakes as well, but like the industry is so young that you can't really avoid those mistakes. You have to do them to learn from them. And essentially, like, you have to understand what are the lessons learned. And for example, if you're driving an initiative, right, let's say you've started an accelerator program, which we did like a couple of months ago. It didn't work out, but it was a very great learning experience for us. So okay, so for example, like, we started like a program. Okay, so it didn't work out. Why it didn't work out? What can we change for the future that it can work out, and how we can enhance it, right? So that's something to keep in mind. And also applies the same, like, for example, to the grants. For example, like, lots of I mean, in 2021, if you look at it, lots of foundations, lots of protocols, they were giving out grants like candies. So like everyone could just qualify for one. And yeah, that wasn't probably the right approach, but that doesn't mean that you have to disqualify grants completely. So you can actually look at that, let's say, experience, and learn from it, and actually build something more sustainable. And this is, for example, what we've done at Telos. So we looked at all these for example, protocols or layer ones that have been given out grants like more aggressively in the past, and we said, okay, let's adopt a model that would make sense, right? So like, let's, for example, give the grants based on milestones, which are more granular, or let's give the grant, like, for example, once the project deploys, and we do the QA check. And of course, like, also as a business developer, you're always I would say a bit stressed, because especially when it comes to DeFi, because you never know which protocol is going to be the next one to get hacked in your ecosystem.
Yeah.
When something is going to happen, you really don't know. All you can do is like, okay, you can just like say like, okay, once something happened, okay, now how do I address this issue? Okay, for example, once we had a hack issue, so like now let's improve our quality assurance process, right? So like analyze, okay, they've done like this sort of work, and essentially the code changes they have in place won't impact much, or won't present new security issues, and essentially like take it from there. But you have to be ready that things can blow up. Things can happen, like, because in the end of the day you're dealing with different pieces. You're shuffling different pieces. Like you have your existing projects, you have the projects you're onboarding, like new, like trying to get them to come into your ecosystem, and then like you have the strategy on the other hand, that you have to look at it and be like, okay, so like, does it fit into our strategy? And then the other thing is like, you have to also keep on checking your numbers, right? So what are you doing? Like, how does it impact the data? So
Hmm.
is it beneficial or no? So do we see, for example, transactions increasing? Do we see the number of users increasing? And if this doesn't happen, like, why it's not happening? You can't just, like, I've seen people just like, for example, seeing that the initiative doesn't work, cutting it off completely and thinking that it's better to actually focus on something else. It might be a right strategy, I'm not arguing with that, but I always think that like maybe it's also worth checking what didn't work exactly, what I didn't do right, and try it maybe differently, give it another chance, and then see if it's going to work or not. So it's always easy to cut off something and treat it as a sunk cost, but I think like giving it a try like once more and checking it out like much closer, and seeing like, okay, which actually attributes or which parameters can I shuffle to achieve a better result, and then actually get to that better result. So yeah, I would say like the day of business developer, generally speaking, is quite vibrant. So you get to speak to, yeah, different founders, projects, but you also get to work internally with different teams, like work with product, you work with marketing, you work with community, you work with, yeah, developers in the team. So you also get to experience that palette, which is great because you, from each one you learn something new, which is also awesome. But also like I would say, being a business developer, I mean, you have to be, I think in my view, ready for it. Like you have to be ready to be on standby like 24/7. So you can't just like leave your messages unanswered, even if it's a weekend. Like, you don't have to answer maybe straight away, but like you kind of have to be on standby. And if there are questions or there are issues, you have to be able to jump in quite quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Um, your role sounds very, very varied.
Correct.
Were you expecting it to be that varied before you moved into that position?
To be honest with you, I was looking forward to it. So,
Okay.
yes, like, because the reason why I actually moved out of the traditional space is like I wanted always something dynamic. I wanted something fast paced. And for me, it was like, okay, I want to try it out. I want to try to fail, right? So, because a lot of people, a lot of times, they are afraid to fail,
Hmm.
and to me, like, I mean, like, failure is a way to actually learn something and to kind of find like something new, find something that you like, and explore yourself as well to a certain degree, understand your strengths and weaknesses. So that was what I wanted. And I thought like in the traditional space, you can't really do it because in most of the cases you're just stuck to what you're doing, right? And you can't really step right or left. You have to focus on what you're doing. You can't, like, your role won't vary. It will be from day one to day the same one. It's like a machine, let me put it this way, and you're
Yeah.
part of that machinery. So unfortunately, right, I would call it also modern slavery, but I don't know, maybe some people won't like it, but yes, this is how I see it. But like when you are in the startup world or when you're in like Web3 space, it's not the same. It's very like, yeah, your role varies it can vary based on the circumstances. Your role can evolve and change, actually. Like, of course, when the organization gets more mature, your role also becomes more mature. Like, you also probably won't be looking for a generalist. You'll be more looking more for the specialized people, right? So I wouldn't say like I'm specialized. I would say I'm more of a generalist. And this
Hmm.
is what I enjoy doing, because I just can't see myself sticking to a specialized role and being like, okay, I'm just going to do that. I like to see myself in different roles, and actually also to, like, grow with it, right? To And when you do different, like, you wear different hats, you actually also explore what you like more and what you don't like, so
Yeah.
you understand that as well, and you get a good grasp of it, and you're like, okay. So, and you also understand, like, okay, for example, marketing, I will tell you I'm not good at it, right? So I like I will leave it to professionals. So even if I'm asked to do something like a small in marketing, I'll be like, no, I would like to check it with the person that understands, because I'm really not good at it. So like, that's not something like, I mean, I'm good at. So I'm always open about it. But generally speaking, right, like, that's what I like about the space, is that, like, you can actually try to find out your strengths and weaknesses, and you can leverage your strengths, right? So you can actually utilize them, and no one will be blocking you. Essentially,
Mm.
you'll be able to do that, whereas in the traditional space you will not have this opportunity. That's why, like, I always tell to younger generation, or to the ones that are like graduating or doing their studies, I'm like, okay, like, you can always go and work for a much bigger organization when you're 50 or close to 50 or whatever, but like, you don't need to do it right now. You can just go and try things out. You can try, fail, try again, fail till you succeed, and
Yeah.
then decide for yourself, like, whether you don't like this fast-paced environment, and go to a different environment which offers you a better work-life balance. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's better to take the risk earlier, and then if you're
Right.
exploring all these different opportunities and all of these different areas of work, then yeah, you
I
really
agree.
understand what you want to do earlier in your career. And then you get to do the fun stuff for longer than if you were exploring it later on.
Correct. And like, when you're young, I think you shouldn't, like, of course, like, financial part plays an important role, but when you're younger, you shouldn't, I think, chase just the salary part or salary component. Like, because sometimes people, they do get fixated much more on that, and then, like, they end up going to a, like, workplace or to a space that they don't like, and they just, like, around because they really like, the salary that they get paid, like, they really like the comfort, but in the end of the day, they might even hate their jobs. So,
Yeah,
and I think that's not really healthy as well. I think, like, you should just, like, follow your interests, because if you really follow your interests and do what you like, you will make eventually your money. So,
that's true. It's easier said than done, isn't it? Because
no,
I
true,
remember
true.
back when I first started my career, I think everyone was telling me, do something you really enjoy and this kind of stuff. And
Correct.
then you kind of think, actually, you know what? I just want to make as much money as possible. And then the further you get into career, you actually think, you know what? Like, I need more purpose than I need
Correct.
the money
Yeah.
aspect. And if you have the purpose, you get really interested in it, you get really passionate about it, and then the rest of it kind of looks after itself, to
Correct.
be honest. Um,
Exactly, because, like, when you have passion, you do something that you enjoy, you become good at it, and you become successful, right?
mm,
So, and essentially, the financial part comes with it, right? So that's what happens in most of the cases, I would say. So, and that's what you should be fixated on, actually, to do something that I really like and I really enjoy, like dragging yourself to an office, like from 9 to 5 or whatever, just suffering throughout the day. I don't know,
wasn't for
like,
me.
yeah,
Wasn't
same.
for me.
It wasn't for me as well. So, like, you start, of course, all of us start in this manner, because you hear, for example, you study, for example, you do your studies, like, you graduate from the university, you hear, like, for example, one of your peers, like, ended up getting a job, like a high paid job, and you're like, oh wow, I want to do the same, I want to follow the same footsteps, and then, like, you actually start following the same footsteps, you end up in an environment that you don't really like, you don't really enjoy, you understand that they don't leverage your actually strengths, all strengths, so you're just like a cog in the machine, right? So you have to make sure that the machine turns, and you become part of that machinery, and essentially, like, yeah, in the end of the day, you don't enjoy it, you know that, kind of, you complete your day, you come back home, and yeah, you just watch TV, and you repeat it, you rinse and repeat it for 5 days in a week, and essentially you enjoy like when you have your weekends, and then like everything starts again on Monday. And
Yeah,
essentially, like for me, I think that's not the best I don't know option personally. I really enjoy the space. I really enjoy what I'm doing. So for me, it doesn't matter whether it's a weekend or a weekday. I can work on
mhm,
weekends and weekdays. So, and that's the biggest like factor like to take into consideration, because like when I work on the weekday, I don't weekend, I don't feel like I'm suffering. I actually enjoy it. So
that's good. Yeah, not many. I don't know if there are many people out there that can say that.
exactly,
A lot of people
unfortunately,
live for the weekends, right?
correct.
So yeah, it's tricky. So Nikki, could you introduce us to Telos in a bit more
Sure.
detail?
Sure, of course. I'm sure like some people know already about Telos in the space, because it's one of the oldest projects actually launched in 2018. But
Mhm.
sometimes we get actually confused with Telos as well. But I will just like to mention that it's two different projects, so we're not correlated or related in any form. So Telos is actually layer one chain. We launched in 2018 it's a delegated proof of stake, and when we launched in a fair launch manner. So which means that we airdropped our tokens to the community members. So we didn't have any ICO or any fundraising. And essentially, the differentiating part of the chain factors of the chain is that, like in production, we can process like up to 15,200 TPS. And when it comes to gas fees, they are like super low and they are fixed. So they don't fluctuate with network volume. So as a matter of fact, they are predictable. And essentially in 2021, what we did, we launched Telos EVM. And the reason behind it is fairly simple, because if you look at different like ecosystems or chains, and or also different dApps, like majority of the dApps deploy most of the times on EVM chains. And essentially because it's much easier, so they can use the same tools, they don't need to do a code change, significant code change, and they can just they don't need to get, for example, a security audit in most of the times as well, because they're simply deploying their smart contracts. Whereas if, for example, if you have your like native stack, most of the times they will need to write their smart contracts, take into the consideration for example, the coding language that you're using, and adapt to that. And hence, that's why, for example, you have much more growth, I would say, and deployment possibilities for dApps on the EVM chains than on the other chains. And essentially, that's what we did. We launched Telos EVM in 2021. This is one of the most high performed EVMs out there. So, and essentially, how it works, it's just like a smart contract that sits on top of the native layer, and the EVM RPC plays a crucial role because it translates the native APIs into the EVM RPC methods. It processes the same code as other EVMs, and it's actually the only differentiation is that we have Telos, which is used as a gas token, but pretty much it is fairly EVM compatible. And essentially, this is where we're focused on when it comes to the ecosystem growth, and this is where we're growing our ecosystem when it comes to gaming and DeFi dApps. At the moment, we're onboarding various steps there. But also one thing to remember, I think if people check out our Twitter and our X account, or our other social media, they will see that we've been lately talking about Snarkter. We're actually also making waves when it comes to the ZK topic. So, and Snarktor is basically, it's a decentralized protocol for scaling snarks. It's actually a novel approach. So what it does, it's meant for decentralized recursive proof aggregation. So it actually, what it does, it enables aggregating many proofs for different transactions into a unique proof, and those transactions can be completely unrelated. And the resulting proof, what it happens is that it can be verified more efficiently and have a constant verification time independent from the number of aggregated proofs. And this not only enhances, for example, the scalability of a a chain, but also makes it more feasible for the use cases. And essentially, this is a novel approach that we're taking here, and we are like aiming to make it like decentralized from day one. So if you, for example, look at various ZK rollups in the industry, there's always like some sort of a centralized factor. If, for example, sequencer, and we're trying to actually remove all those centralized elements. And we will also introduce kind of a reward mechanism for the protocol, and all the like the actors participating in this protocol will be rewarding for the tasks they complete. So there will be for actors, like for example users, the ones that submit requests for the ZK proofs they want to be aggregated. This can be anyone. Then you have, like for example, schedulers. Those are the special like actors or entities that coordinate the proof aggregation process. Then there are provers. They do the actual work because they merge proofs according to the schedule, and the submitters, they submit final aggregate proofs on chain. But like that, basically, we will produce the proof of concept in about 3 to 4 months, and we'll showcase it during ECC, hopefully.
Sounds cool. Yeah, I was going to ask you how far along that journey are you guys? But yeah, 3, 4 months
Yes,
until you're
correct.
ready to
Correct.
launch, or is that just to kind of showcase
It's a proof
parts
of
of the project?
concept. It's a proof of
Okay,
concept. So currently we have like basically the white paper available on our website, like, and people can check it out. And
okay.
basically like, but the proof of concept or the MVP will be available like right before the ECC. This is where we would like to showcase, the protocol.
Sounds cool. Yeah, I'll be keeping an eye out for it.
Awesome. Sounds good.
And what's it really like building or working in a project like that? You know, obviously, a Web3 project's been around for a long time. Building innovative things, you know, on the surface, or people outside of the industry, maybe it looks really glamorous and cool and things like this to work in those types of projects, which I'm sure it is. But what's it really like when you're actually on the ground trying to get something like that built, developed out there, get it in front of the right people? Like, what's it really like? Can you give us any insight on that?
Sure, sure, sure. So it depends, right? It actually depends on many factors, but one of the key things is the market conditions, I would say. So
Okay.
if you, for example, look at the bear market, is different than when you look at the bull market when you're in a Web3 startup or a space. So in bear market, like generally speaking, what you're focused on solidifying infrastructure, you're focused on improving products and actually understanding like how you can deepen the user engagement or your community engagement. And essentially, like what they say, it's like the bar markets are for builders. And it is true, because like you don't have too much distraction going on. So you, as a protocol, as a uh, basically, as a company, you focus on delivering and shipping products. And this is what we did to most of the degree. Like we were trying to grow the ecosystem. Of course, you have enough stress as well, because like, of course, you see, for example, you live from one incident to the other incident, right? So you see something getting hacked, you see like FTX crashing, like you go through that. And
Yeah.
essentially like you'll get just like used to it eventually. But in the end of the day, this does affect your operations, and this does affect your mind, because you don't know how long this is going to last. And as a matter of fact, you don't know where you need to save your costs and what are the measures you should take, because there is no like, there's no rule book for that, and no one knows, right? So you have to understand, like, basically, and go with the flow to a certain extent. So this is like one thing to look at it. But as a matter of fact, you're still focused on building, you're still focused on actually ensuring that you can grow your ecosystem, because like historically, that after each bear market there's a bull market, and you want to capitalize on it before the bull market. And essentially, like, a lot of the time people make a mistake of waiting till bull market before like making higher expenditures and for example growing the ecosystem and so on. But I think that's a mistake, because once you hit that moment, or once you hit the signal that the bull market is about to start, a lot of other competitors are doing the same thing, and then essentially you will have to spend much more, most probably, to attract the same projects or the same initiatives into your ecosystem, because things become much more expensive, because people want more money, because there's more demand for them.
Yeah.
And essentially, like as I said, like the best is like, okay, to take this bear market in a very productive form and try to make the most out of it. And I think that's the best time you can do that. And then when it comes to the bull market, of course, bull market is about like capitalizing on market enthusiasms. Like you have to have lots of expansion and scaling efforts. You know, you have to have different focus as well. So things are moving much faster. You're more prone to make mistakes. Of course, like you're competing against the time, let me put it this way, because like others are also want to come into your spot and take that shining spot away from you. You know, everyone's like raising funds. VCs are spraying and praying, you know, so a lot of things are happening at the same time. And as a matter of fact, like, yeah, you don't have much of a time, I would say, to focus on building and concentrate. Of course, you still have to keep on building, but your concentration becomes completely different. You want to market, you want to showcase, you want to basically show that you're relevant, you know, and the aim is to stay relevant, because like during the bull market, it's much harder, because there's so many things happening that you know, the people start concentrating on different things. They might, there are many more projects. They look for different projects. They look for this new shiny stuff, you know, like that they can invest and make them like 20 or 30x, or maybe sometimes 100x, you know. So it depends on the market conditions, I would say. But generally speaking, right, like I would say it's always very important to keep on delivering, no matter the hype or no matter marketing. You know, hype is good, don't get me wrong. It's actually, unfortunately, it is required by the industry, but essentially you have to eventually justify that hype. And if you don't have something to back it up with, like, it's basically a sand castle, right? It will be destroyed eventually. And as a matter of fact, like, you have to keep on building and showcasing that you're actually building something really cool, something that really can change the industry and can bring something new to the industry players. So that's basically something to keep in mind.
There's a lot for people to understand, right, before they move into the Web3 space. You've obviously given us a snapshot there of all sorts of different things that you have to be aware of, the market conditions and yeah, the bull market, bear market, plus like different mindsets in each one and everything. Is there any advice that you can share for people if someone's coming into the Web3 space? Anything you can share on how they can try and build a successful career, or anything that you'd like people to be aware of before they actually move into Web3?
Sure. First thing first, what I would like to mention about it is like you have to have an interest. If you're not having an interest, like you're not gonna get too far, because we've seen in the previous bull market that a lot of people were coming from the big corporates to Web3 because they've heard about like large checks they can get, you know, and then essentially like, combined with tokens, right? So it was quite attractive for them, and they would just like jump the ship because of that. And I think that's a wrong reason to enter Web3. So that's my view, because in the end of the day, like what we've seen also, that during the bear market, those people were not needed anymore. And essentially they ended up going back to the traditional space, right? So as a matter of fact, apart from the others that who also ended up going to traditional space. My thing is that, like, what I would like to emphasize, Web3 is not a job, it's a lifestyle. So you have to live it to be able to actually succeed in it. This is what I believe in strongly, and this is what I follow religiously myself. So if I didn't follow it, I wouldn't mention it. But like, for me, it's a lifestyle. What I mean by that, like, it means that you have to constantly check out, learn, improve yourself, check what's going on in the market, check what's happening. Like, let's say I'm working at Telos, right? I'm always constantly monitoring what chains are coming out there, why are they better, what are they doing, like, and not only just layer one, layer two, so you also check, for example, layer threes, right? Like, and what are they bringing into the industry, why are they like better or worse, so how can we capitalize, can we work with them, like, what are they doing different than us? So you always have to keep on learning to be able to actually apply that knowledge to your actual work. So of course, it can also, for dexes and stuff like this, it can be a bit different, but it's the same, right? Dex is even a more competitive space, I would say, because you have so many centralized exchanges, right? And
Yeah.
essentially, like, you have to be always on top of the like on top of the industry, like, so you have to understand what are the trends, you have to understand what's happening, what's coming next, in order to be able to kind of like take advantage of it. And essentially, like, kind of like, as I mentioned before, right, like, this is very important for strategic planning also, and also for partnership building. And you have to have the grasp of technical concepts as well, and like, when it comes like to BDs, like, you have to be hands-on. You can't just like, for example, let's say you're a BD in DeFi or in gaming or whatever, right? You can't just like be like, okay, read a white paper or read an article and understand how the protocol works. You have to try the stuff out. Like, generally speaking, when you join Web3, it doesn't matter what your role is, even if you're marketing, you have to try the stuff out. Like, you
Mhm.
have to connect your wallet, you have to basically, like, it's my view, my opinion, and I strongly like push people for it. I'm like, yeah, you don't have to connect your main wallet. You can just create a burner wallet and try to connect and play around, right? So, like,
Yeah.
but you have to play around with stuff to understand how things are working, why they're working like this. And you realize that actually, when you do that, it's much easier to grasp the concepts than when you are actually trying to read it out and trying to learn it from an article, because article doesn't just gives you like an overview, and sometimes the overview can be very complex. In Web3, we really like to come up with these complex articles, but then, like, in the end of the day, when we actually try the protocol itself, it's just like really simple, like. And that's basically what I always tell to people. You have to also try, you have to like invest your time in it. And and just be resilient, right? Because the industry is both rewarding and challenging. It has its ups and downs, like bear and bull markets. And I think like patience, like persistence and willingness to adapt in this space, like, are the greatest assets.
Yeah, I agree. You'll be surprised how many people that I speak to as a recruiter in Web3 who don't have a wallet. They say, "Look, I'm really interested in getting into the space," and I go, "Okay, cool. Like, have you ever traded crypto? Have you ever bought an NFT? Like, what have you done anything about that?" And they say, "No, no, it's too risky for me, so I haven't put my own money into it." And I
Exactly.
think, well, you want to risk your career on it, but you're not willing to risk $10 to just have a play around with something, right? Um,
Exactly. And now it's not like, you have to be afraid of the Ethereum gas fees or whatever. You have like a lot of cheaper alternatives where you can actually use like 20, $50 and try things out,
yeah,
and learn things along the way. So you don't have to really go for the expensive alternatives. You have like really, yeah, you can go like for cheap alternatives and actually learn.
completely agree. Completely agree. So that's if someone is stepping into the Web3 space then. What about if someone wants to be successful as a business developer specifically in Web3? You've definitely touched on a number of points so far, to be honest, over the last hour or so on your views on being a successful business developer. But if you could kind of summarize that there within Web3.
Sure. So I like the major stuff that I would summarize is that, like, doesn't matter business developer or whatever. Like, if you're stepping into the space, like, just bear in mind that Web3 is not a job; it's a lifestyle. Be always for business developers. I would always recommend to be super responsive, and as mentioned, right, be persistent. Like, keep on learning, and ensure that, like, basically. You have patience and willingness to adapt, so you have to embrace, like, learning new stuff. And if you do that, you will be successful. That's how I see it. Like, it's not a rocket science after all, and we all can learn everything, like, if we just decide to dedicate ourselves to it and would think like, okay, we have enough time or passion for it, we will do it. So, and I think that that's like the important thing to keep in mind is that like, do I really like what I'm doing? So am I interested in it, and do I want to pursue it, right? So and essential to understand like, okay, I want to learn this, I really want to succeed in it, and I think that will be enough for you, because it's like, it's not like you need someone to teach you, you have all the
Mhm.
information available online. So it's all about you, your persistence, your passion for the space, and your actually eagerness to learn.
I like that. I like that a lot. And are there any do's and don'ts about being a business developer? Probably more of the don'ts, because you've mentioned a lot of your advice on how to succeed. But are there any key things that stand out to you that are just big no-nos in
Sure. So
Web3?
for me personally, maybe some people might agree or disagree with it, but like I always prefer to maintain transparency, whether it comes to the parties that I work with in the company or the parties outside, right? So because I believe that transparency and trust is paramount no matter which industry you are in, be it in traditional space or in the industry we're in currently. So that's like, I would always say like, do always that, like maintain transparency, be honest. If you don't like something, mention it. And if you think like, okay, be responsive as well, but like generally speaking, try to be transparent with projects. There's no need to lie, there's no need to like, sugarcoat stuff. And and the other thing, like don'ts that I would say is like, I mean, don't underestimate the complexity of your work. What I mean by that, like, don't think that like you know everything.
Mhm.
A lot of people actually do that. They think like, ah, okay, they by now they know everything and they have the knowledge and experience, and it's just like another gig for them. No, you don't. So like, you try to keep on learning stuff as you go and try to improve yourself, and that's something to keep in mind, like, because I've seen a lot of people doing that mistake, and I think that's just like that's the wrong approach in my view.
That's cool. No, I tend to agree. Tend to agree. So Nikki, to finish up then, um, knowing what you know now about business development, about Web3, about what you find passionate, is there any advice that you would share or could share for your younger self if you could go back to the start of your career?
Oh wow, yes, of course. If I could tell my younger self, I think I would have actually started in this industry much earlier. So I would have skipped all the other part and just like jumped into it like much earlier. That's, I think, the only advice I would give myself. Like, of course, like I could go back and say like I wouldn't do this or do those this or that mistake or whatever, but I think that's a wrong approach, because like in the end of the day, mistakes make us who we are, right? So, and we'll
Mhm.
learn along the way. So essentially, I do believe that it's really important to make those mistakes, like especially if you're in a startup. But generally speaking, like, yeah, I would risk more, I would say, and just jump into the space much more earlier than I have.
Love that. Well, Nikki, thank you very much for your time today. You shared some brilliant advice over the time that we've been speaking. I'm gonna have to go back and watch this episode quite a few times myself, and probably implement quite a lot of things that you've said. So yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Jack. It was awesome speaking to you, and thanks for this amazing initiative. I really hope that this helps the others in the industry as well. And yeah, like, kind of people can watch and learn from it and take the best out of it. And I'm really thankful for you actually hosting me, and really looking forward to the final product.
Great stuff. And Nikki, if people want to ask any extra questions, as you said, is there anywhere that they can go to reach out to you or reach out to other business developers in the Web3 space?
Sure. So we have this actual initiative that we're running, essentially with a couple of friends of mine, which is called BD in Web3. It's a Telegram group. But basically, we have like a bunch of BDs from different projects in that group. And essentially, what we're trying to do is to connect people and to learn from each other. This is one. And the other way like they can reach out to me is via my Telegram. It's like at Nicky Chalabi. It's all together. So, and they can find me on LinkedIn or actually on Twitter as well. So LinkedIn is Nicky Chalabi, and on Twitter is at MaxiNicky. So they can message me anytime if they have any industrial related questions, or they want to, for example, learn stuff or ask stuff they're not sure about. So I'll be more than happy to help them out. I've done it in the past for other friends of mine, and yeah, super excited about it.
Sounds great. Well, Nikki, thanks
Thank
again,
you.
and
Yeah.
I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day, Jack.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye
Bye.
bye.